Come along, children. Now we're going to have a little music.
Yo, what is up, guys? Welcome back to First Cut. This is another edition of Anime Talk. I'm here with another very special guest. I have Rafael in the house. You know him for reviews all over the place, whether it's IGN or anywhere else. He is writing about anime. An actual anime critic is here to talk about anime. Rafael, how are you doing, man?
I'm good, Andres. How you doing? Thank you for having me here.
I'm good, man. I'm excited to have you on because anime is becoming bigger and bigger by the day, by the hour. So I feel like it's a perfect time to dive into more anime talk and more anime content. I want to get into the very first thing with you is how did you both get into anime and get into anime discussions, writings, coverage in general?
So I think I got into anime without knowing it was anime. I think like a lot of people, I got into it mostly by like watching Pokemon, and just for me at the time, I thought it was just like any other cartoon. Like you watch and then you buy the toys, and then you get obsessed with it and you buy more toys, and then from then it just I got into that whole sort of 90s Pokemania stuff. Like after that, like Digimon, Yu-Gi-Oh, Beyblade, like all of those like more aimed at kids type of shows. Then I mostly stopped watching cartoons when I like went to like high school and stuff. Like I missed the whole Naruto era. And then I just got back to it around the time of Attack on Titan, really. Mostly because my youngest brother at the time just started watching anime. He told me like, hey, you need to watch this show because we were both into like Game of Thrones and like The Walking Dead and that kind of thing. And he was like, this is kind of like that. And I'm like, okay, give it. And we watched the first episode and then I was hooked. And then like I haven't looked back. And that was like 2014, like shortly after it came out. And then when it comes to coverage, it was mostly when the third season of Attack on Titan came out, and that was like at the height of his popularity and the height of like, from in my opinion, like the best season of that show, and just wanted to write about it. And I had just started freelancing for Slash Film at the time, and I pitched my editor, "Hey, I have a bunch of ideas about Attack on Titan. What do you think?" And he told me, "Well, um, we're actually kind of looking for somebody to write regularly about anime. Why don't you do a column and just start exploring anime that are from a perspective of like introducing it to newcomers and you're like finding anime and sort of explaining why this could be the first anime you can watch." And from then it just became like I've been doing that for 4 years now.
Wow.
Semi regularly. I started like bi-weekly, but then I realized like I can't watch a 75 episode long show in 2 weeks. So I just it became a monthly thing, and then it just became about like finding new outlets and new editors who seem interested in anime and just seeing, hey, would you be interested in like reviews or editorials or whatever? And as I'm sure we'll talk about later, it's being more common now to find editors who say yes to this kind of thing than it used to be even like 2, 3 years ago.
That's amazing, man. And obviously, can you give us some of your I just want people to be able to check you out, and I'll link it down below if you give me a heads up. But some of the stuff you've worked on before, whether it's an article or a movie review that you've done, where can people find your writings and your coverage?
When it comes to anime, some of the things I'm most proud of, I recently did an interview for IndieWire with the author of Vinland Saga,
Oh wow.
which is really fun. I love that story, both the manga and the anime, and he was a delight to talk to. On at Bolcho, I talked to Makoto Shinkai, who did Your Name,
Hmm.
and I interviewed him for Suzume. And then I mostly do like my, as I said, like that column for Slash Film and a bunch of reviews for IGN. That's mostly where I'm at.
Awesome. That's amazing, man. That's really cool. And it's interesting you mentioned pitching animes for people who probably could get into anime. If you had to make an anime starter pack, let's say, I don't know, 5 animes that people need to watch and they haven't watched anime before, or maybe they've watched a little bit, what would be the anime to get into anime?
So I think as I discovered doing that column for Slash Film, I think the key is mostly easing them into like the things that are unique about anime, and mostly finding comparisons to shows or movies that people have watched, like Western media. So for example, like I think like my go-to now is Attack on Titan, mostly because I know a lot of people like to say Cowboy Bebop, but I think like by this point, Cowboy Bebop is starting to be a little bit old, and mostly Cowboy Bebop, what it made it great at the time, and it's a bit dated now, is that it's mostly episodic. Whereas because of streaming now, everyone's into like serialized shows and wanting like a continuous story. So I think Attack on Titan sort of fits that bill, and just like getting into this world and all these like this world building, this lore, and these characters. So I think that's my number one pick. Also, just to give a little bit of like variation in terms of genre, I think like Haikyuu what will be another one. Again, because it's a modern show, so like the animation looks better than something like Hajime no Ippo, even though I love that show. That show is a little bit dated. Your Name, probably, if I can pick like a movie instead of a TV show.
Yeah.
If only like to show people how like beautiful anime can look, and how like beautiful 2D animation can look. Monster, the 2004 anime, I think is a good one. I discovered that earlier this year because it got added on Netflix after being unavailable for years. I think that show is a really good recommendation for people who are into like just prestige TV dramas like The Wire or The Sopranos. It's like a slow burn sort of medical thriller that doesn't really feel like what you think of as anime when you first like hear about it. You know what I mean? It feels very like grounded and realistic, while still being a story that works because it's animated, if that makes sense. And then my number five, probably like One Punch Man, just to like throw something like weird and epic and fun in there.
That's epic, man. Yeah. I feel like it's always tough, right?
Oh
Because
yeah,
when it comes to hesitancy around anime, it's usually a disconnect within the medium itself, where people are not used to not just the animation, because most Americans are used to animation. It's mainly used to the types of stories, themes, and style around it. So when I try to recommend anime for shows, I used to do this too for a couple podcasts. I used to do an anime segment and recommending anime to like just completely newbies and just they didn't know anything about anime. And I always recommended Death Note. Death Note was one that to me was something that they could kind of put their teeth into, because it's not necessarily, it's more of like a horror-ish vibes, and it's more centered around the detective story, and it's less like outside of that framework. I'm sure there's actual terms to describe this, but there's a thing in anime, they kind of break the both the fourth wall, but also the anime wall, where they're breaking their inside their own animation, right? Where you could see them go chibi, you could see them do something crazy, they get huge, then they get little. I think that's confusing for some people. And animes that tend to not do that, like Attack on Titan, like Death Note, are probably the best way to do it. I feel like that's part of it. I don't know. Let me know if I'm right or wrong.
no, you're totally right. It's something like I remember a few months ago, like Michael B. Jordan talked about like his starter pack for anime because of like Creed 3 and his anime influences, and he like picked a bunch of shonen shows which are great, but his like recommendation for your first anime was like One Piece,
Nah,
like Hunter x Hunter, like hundreds of episodes,
hundreds.
and also like pure anime, like you're going all in on like tropes, on like the
Tropes, yeah.
cultural differences as well. And like as you're saying, in like the sort of experiment, like not experimenting, but like the changing of animated styles and everything. Which if you are like used to only knowing like Cartoon Network back in the day, and like live action stuff now, that's a bit too much in one go, I would say.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, I definitely think like something like more grounded in a way. Or like, well, I mean, even like Death Note and Attack on Titan have like big, like fantastical elements, but it's like an easier vibe when it's like just one thing, like just one high concept, and
Yeah.
everything else like it makes sense.
Yeah, and another one
It
to
doesn't
me,
work in live action necessarily, but it makes sense one like in animation without being like too overwhelming at once.
yeah, and another one for me is always like sci-fi. I mean, you mentioned Cowboy Bebop, but to me, like sci-fi anime has always been really cool to get into. Ghost in the Shell is still like probably my favorite anime of all time. And the Ghost in the Shell series is super underrated, and a lot of people haven't seen it. But if you want to see uh standalone complex Ghost in the Shell, it's 2 seasons and it's really, really, really good. In fact, I think it's perfect. And then the Ghost in the Shell movies, because there's like 10 Ghost in the Shell movies, and they're all really like political sci-fi thrillers. So they're not going to necessarily push people away with like something really weird and bombastic happening, or it's always going to be kind of grounded inside that futuristic world. And I think that's like a perfect way to get into anime, in my opinion. So those are
Yeah, I
some,
really like
yeah,
I really
mine.
like the original Ghost in the Shell is like the revealed one, but I yeah, those sequels are not bad. Like I really like the second one. The second one, they start just going places, but they still like feel like just part of that same sort of framework of the first one. So yeah, no, those are good shots.
Yeah, to me, I think standalone complex is like perfect, and it's really the interesting aspect where a lot of people, like you said, regard that first movie as like perfection and like nothing can touch it, and everything after it is like hearsay or whatever. But in reality, it's like the series, in my opinion, kind of expands on what the themes of the first movie is, and they kind of like take it and just really explode it on a just global political level. And it's amazing the way they do it, like what would be this world in real life. And I think that's why it's one of my favorite animes of all time. But kind of going on what your job is, I want to know, how are you feeling about anime at the moment, the state of anime, whether it comes to the type of coverage we're getting, the shows we're getting, the way we're getting these shows? How are you feeling about it? And this kind of like mini explosion that's going on at the moment.
So I mean, I love it. Like it's both giving me work and it has been giving me like and I think like everyone like an opportunity to just finally being able to talk freely. Like I mean, just the fact that I can now not only like wear anime t-shirts in public, but like people will like recognizing like and not make fun of you. That is huge. And that's mostly like a relatively new thing because of how accessible anime is, like how easy it is to watch not only like famous shows from like a few years ago, like classic shows, but just like to be up to date with things. Like I grew up at the time when like you had to watch YouTube videos and like the episodes were cut into 3 parts, and if one of those got like copyright claims or whatever, then you're screwed. There's no way to like know what happened. You have to fast forward to the next episode and hope you can make sense of it. So that thing is just great. Like the ease of access for anime worldwide. Um, because like even after the Crunchyroll Funimation merger, which I'm always against monopolies and like condensation of media, there's still so many other platforms now because everyone wants to get into anime. And the fact that like because of that demand, things like the Netflix jail has been decreased significantly. Like before, I remember like Carol and Tuesday, which is also a great show by the creator of Cowboy Bebop, got released in the West like 6 months after it finished airing in Japan because they wanted to wait for like the translations and the dubs and the subs and all of that. Whereas now Netflix is doing simulcast just like Crunchyroll. Now the one that's like lacking behind is Hulu or like Disney Plus internationally for some reason. But even then, just like the fact that there's so many options that like, everyone wants to get into anime and everyone's trying to like um just bring that to more people. Like and it's also because of that, it's never been easier to get into it and to find people who as we are talking right now, can recommend, kind of like guide newcomers into like becoming anime fans. That's never been easier.
And because of that, I also feel like there's this, let's just get into it. Obviously there's a strike going on inside of Hollywood when it comes to the WGA and SAG. And because of that, coverage for a lot of influencers, especially on TikTok, they've kind of taken this upon themselves, and all power to them, obviously, because this is what they want to do and they want to stand in solidarity with the writers and the actors. But they've taken this kind of pivot and shift towards anime content, and it's been a little bit overwhelming. I kind of want to get your perspective as someone who's actually been covering anime for years, to all of a sudden see this enormous shift towards the medium over this past, I don't know, month and a half.
So I'm of a bit of two minds here, but for one, like my perspective is a bit different than from other journalists and reporters. Like I know you talked to Kate Sanchez, and because she runs a small outlet, I know for her is a different sort of issue, because like now there's more competition, where before this was more of a niche market, and it was easier for like smaller outlets to make a name for themselves and to make an impact, because people just knew that there weren't too many options and they got to know and trust these voices. And now suddenly like there's so many people with established audience, with an established audience, who get into the market and just start like flooding it and make more competition. Whereas for me, I don't necessarily have that problem, because I just freelance for a different outlet, or I just don't get to write about something. And like, bummer, but there's another show, there's another season, or whatever. So I think like that is a bit of an issue for certain outlets, for certain creators. For me, I think the biggest thing is I like that, again, there's more opportunities to talk about anime, and that just brings, and more people talking about anime, that just means there will be more people watching anime, which is always great. There's no downside to it. But I will say that for me, what matters most is just the approach that they bring in, like the why they're covering anime, and specifically whether they like authorized animation in anime. Something like because as we mentioned, like more outlets are covering anime, bigger, more sort of legacy outlets, and like are also writing about it, but they bring in people who have no idea what they're writing about, and they just dismiss it. Like there was a New York Times review of Slam Dunk, the first Slam Dunk movie recently, where the writer just compared it to like Dragon Ball Z. And like, my dude, it's 2023. Is that the only anime reference you know? Can you not Google like popular anime right now and just say it's like Haikyuu? It takes 2 seconds to type in like sports anime and find another comparison. So it's mostly like, if you are a creator and you're talking about anime, are you coming at it from I want to get generally into this? Are you like trying to bring it to more people? Are you just reacting and making fun of, like, haha, look at these like weird cartoons and all of these like weird faces and facial expressions that they make? I think that's the big difference. And I think like that applies to anything else, really, like what kind of content you are making, and what sort of your tone when it comes to that.
Yeah, I think that definitely matters. And there's also a different idea too of like you said, certain media outlets or certain writers taking coverage to it when they don't know what they're talking about, while there are people who do know. It's not like there's a scarcity of people who don't know about it or don't write about it like you. And others who, I mean, I dabble a little bit, but not too much. But it's one of those things where like it definitely matters to have someone who knows what they're talking about. And there's also this, like, I like what you said, there's this otherism too, where if you're writing it from a perspective of like, yeah, this is really weird, I like it. And it's like, I don't know if I want to hear your thoughts on it, if that's your perspective. But at the same time, it's funny because these kind of massive influencers, specifically on TikTok. Are you on TikTok, by the way? You are?
No, because I know
Okay.
once I do, I will not have any more free time.
Yeah, TikTok is like crazy. TikTok is like Godzilla. It's insane. Like it's a complete monster, just tearing up the city, or saving from another monster. We don't know. But it's really like one of those things where there's so many creators on there and so many different people, and the mega influencers have kind of taken upon themselves to do anime content. And part of it is like, okay, they clearly are just doing this because there's nothing else to talk about and they don't really know what's going on. And that also comes into a gatekeeping aspect, I guess, where you're just kind of like, all right, big man, chill out. You don't know what you're talking about. Or you could kind of invite them in and let them explore the medium. But there's also what I've seen, Rafael, over the past year and a half, if not a little bit more. It's mainly like, and it's going to dive into our next topic. It's mainly Attack on Titan, season 4, where I've seen an explosion of people getting into it and creators who have never really talked about anime before talking about Attack on Titan. And that comes with good, and that also comes with really bad. And specifically on TikTok, I've seen the worst, and I mean the worst takes on Attack on Titan I think I've ever seen before. And it's from people. Yeah, and it's from people who like never talk about anime. Like it's just like they talk about like superhero movies, Zack Snyder movies, whatever they want to talk about, Marvel, and then all of a sudden Attack on Titan, and it's the worst take I've ever heard in my life. And I'm like, stay over there. That's just my perspective. But there feels like there's like a negative aspect too with fandom that comes from bad faith, joining the anime fandom and also joining in bad faith.
Yeah, I feel like you mentioned gatekeeping. That's definitely that's not my intention, but I definitely get what you're saying. That
yeah,
you don't. It's not like you need people who love anime to write about anime, and you don't need like people who have spent their whole lives watching anime to write about it or talk about it. But I think like the bare minimum is just somebody who's open to it. I think like the big point is being open to it and meeting it on its own terms rather than just judging something for what you want it to be in a way. Like so like again, like Slam Dunk, like I watched that movie, I love that movie, I reviewed that movie without having seen the show, read the manga, but I understand because I did I took the time and I did the research to know like this is a big deal for these many reasons. So you have to meet the title at face for what it is and judging on its merits, but like understanding that context rather than coming in and just saying like, especially something like Attack on Titan is so easy where like I understand like I do encourage people. I know you have like live like reaction like slash reviews of the episodes during like the whole final season with people who started talking about anime because of Attack on Titan, and like I also started writing about anime because of Attack on Titan. But I think like as I said, there's a difference between just taking a chance that you start making content about this space as you are experiencing it for the first time and not doing the bare minimum work or just trying to like understand the context, because there's also the big cultural differences that you won't understand unless you either come from Japan, live in Japan, or at least read about it. Like Attack on Titan is full of the worst takes because it's very open to those bad takes. But it is very easy to find out the whys or at the very least, like different interpretations that kind of not necessarily lessen the sort of bad things about it, but just make you understand that some of the intent behind it, if that makes sense. Like I also seen like so many bad, like from before, like just from journalists or whatever, from even people who like anime, who have bad takes on Attack on Titan because they don't take the time to understand or to look beyond just the first image that you see, and you're just judging it based on like one thing without knowing how that develops or how that it's explained within the text itself.
Yeah, that's definitely it. I feel like it's more like kind of putting your own baggage into it. I feel like that's part of what it is. But I also feel like it comes from that. There's this side of like YouTube criticism that kind of I want to say originated in 2018-ish. It mainly came out during The Last Jedi. I followed it closely because I was in that world, very much literally working behind the scenes in that world. So I saw it firsthand, and I saw that kind of weird, kind of like grifter fandom or world dive directly into movies and focus on movies. And now I see that
that takes drive traffic. We know that, like people who are like
yeah,
actively searching for that hate because they want those like clickbaity, like
yeah.
just like, oh, I want to know because I want to get mad, and yeah, that's, I mean, coming at it in bad faith.
And I feel like they kind of were like, got their binoculars out, and the same people who do those kind of like grifter mentality looked at anime and were like, yo, look at this market, this is like an ocean, we can just dive in there. So it is kind of frustrating, and it kind of leads to my second question to you, Rafael. Are we ready for the final episode of Attack on Titan? Because I don't think we are. As a world, we're not ready for it.
I mean, yeah, I mean, at this point, I think like one thing that may be an upside to the whole like taking 5 years to just do the final season and calling it, changing the title in 5 different ways,
Yeah,
to avoid saying that it's not the
5-part
final season.
final season.
Yeah, no, it's insane. But there may be an upside to that hype dying down a little bit, because maybe, hopefully, some of the like the bad side of the fandom may just not pay attention and just forget about the show, and just like not come in with those bad takes once the final episode comes out. Like, that's my hope. But yeah, I am excited. I'm also very scared
I'm
for
scared.
like the reactions for it.
Yeah, I'm very scared. I don't know what's gonna happen either, because I purposely avoided it, even though it's like right behind me. The manga. Are you know what's gonna happen?
Yeah,
Oh,
I caved in after like 8 years ago because I just couldn't
okay.
wait anymore. But
I
yeah,
committed
hopefully.
myself to the anime. I was like, we're doing it with the anime. I feel like it's special to see it happen in a visual medium. And as much as I love reading, I feel like this would be the best way to do it. And I don't know what's going to happen, but at the same time, I'm hoping like somehow it's I don't know if it's going to solve anything, but at the same time, I love this show so much, and I do get something else out of it, and I don't understand personally how people get something else out of it, where I just see our main crew. I see John, I see Hanji, especially what she did after the last episode. If you're not caught up, I'll try to walk around it. But it's just a very clear thing. I don't know if you hear creepy, eerie ass like horror music every time Flock is talking. I'm pretty sure he's not a good dude. Like that's just me. But
Oh God, yeah.
yeah, it's just certain things like that where I'm like, the anime's telling you something, and you're just like, yeah, kill the women, and I'm like, what? What are you talking about? What anime are you watching? Stuff like that where I'm just like, it's getting a weird vibe, and I heard Vinland Saga actually got that too, this last season, but I feel
Um,
like a little bit, but not as much as like this one. But I feel like that kind of ideology is just like unnecessary inside a medium that purposely tells you, hey, this is wrong, this is bad, and you're just like, that's good, and I'm like, where are you getting that? I don't see where you're getting that. So I don't know.
I mean, I think like that's just media literacy
That's true.
problem. Like all the time itself, that's not gonna go away. Just like something like Watchmen getting like the worst type of audience for the
That's true.
worst reasons. I think like that there's nothing you can do about it really. About Tango is fun. Like, man, just the whole Aaron right question. That's being
Yeah.
a bit of a minefield at my house with like the whole family, and just like sides have been taken, lines have been drawn. But it's also like, for me at least at this point, you're like, it's part of the fun.
Yeah.
unless you take it to like an extreme. I think like at least to some extent, I have to believe there's a bit of a joke to it. I
Yeah.
hope. Because otherwise I just like, man, I don't know what the hell you think. I don't know how you can come to a conclusion like this. I hope you are okay.
Yeah. It's difficult because I feel like anime offers kind of like an armor, if that makes sense, like a buffer. That's a better word for it. A buffer to where you can kind of wash your hands of certain takes because it's just anime, bro. But yeah, all these people should die, and it's like I don't know if that's the right take, but that buffer kind of allows them to say that take and kind of walk away from it and be like whatever. Whereas like I don't know, maybe something live action or the live action fandom or just Hollywood medium in general, we would find those fans and be like, "Are you good? Are you okay? I don't think you should be
Oh
cool with
yeah.
that."
Yeah, it's only like without diverting from anime too much as the quick as that's one thing that I'm very terrified, but also very, very curious how The Last of Us season 2 is gonna go
Mm,
because of that thing, what you just said, like how that translates from a video game to live action, and whether you feel the same way when it's actual people
mm,
versus just drawings. So I
yeah,
definitely think like there is some disconnect when it comes to
there is.
animation, when it's easier to interpret things a certain way because you are not necessarily connecting to the characters or the story in the same way you would with live action, even if you are like super passionate about the story and you understand it, you like love it, whatever. It is not necessarily the same thing.
Yeah.
Now I will say that regardless, and I'll say that because uh how little left of the story there, like I don't know how long the final episode is gonna be like, but it cannot be. It has to be just one thing.
Yeah.
At the very least, it is mighty impressive that like the 99% of the story that preceded it is still so damn good.
Yeah.
If
Hey.
nothing else, we got 99% of a really, really good anime that I think like would be like, I think that's gonna be like the defining anime of like the 2010s.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Oh yeah.
Uh, so like regardless of how the final episode is received, like at the very, I am just so happy to have you on this like by this point 10-year journey.
Yeah, it's amazing, and it's obviously one of the most impactful animes of my life. I mean, that's my name. It's Squad Leader because of I was watching season 1 of Attack on Titan, and I named myself after Hanji because they called her Squad Leader Hanji like once, and or twice maybe. It's something that I've always loved, and I've kept up with that world, and that's why I'm also able to have an outside lens where I see it grow. I'm like the grandpa where I see it grow and I could see the negativity kind of fester in there. And I'm just kind of trying to like stop the fire. You see me with a towel, just trying to whip it out. So I'm able to do that. But at the same time, it's kind of cool to have that lens through an anime only watcher perspective because I don't know what's coming. So I don't have this kind of like, I know what's going to happen kind of idea where I do see a lot of readers, no offense to all the readers out there, have that kind of a different level of gatekeeping
Yeah,
or of
yeah.
like superiority where they're just like, I read it and I'm like, all right, chill. But either way, Rafael, I want to finish up with some of your favorite anime you've seen this year. If you could give me like a few, it could be movies or shows.
Um, Number one would be Vinland Saga, like without a question. That second season, like my God, talk about like you just like Attack on Titan thing, like had a very big sort of tonal switch with the final season, and like even before, like you saw this sort of tonal change between seasons. What Vinland Saga did in terms of tone, in terms of character, like I think I wrote in my review, I gave it like a perfect score for IGN. I wrote like I haven't seen a character arc like this except in something like The Sopranos or in Breaking Bad. Like if this was live action, it would be winning like all of the Emmys, all of the awards. We would be talking about it with those shows. Um, it just amazing. What else? The Slam Dunk movie, the first Slam Dunk. it just looks stunning. Like the way they capture those movements, like in the basketball game. Like I've seen a lot of sports anime, but none that look as good as this, and then like in a way that's both realistic while still being like completely like intrinsic to animation. What else?
It can be animated too if you want to add some animated movies in there.
I mean, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie. I know, like, Across the Spider-Verse is like the easy answer for like the best animated movie of the year, and I love it with all my heart too. But I kind of knew that it was gonna be good, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Whereas the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie just surprised me and it blew me away. It looks great. The story is fantastic. Speaking of anime, there are a bunch of anime references in there, where like to the point where like Attack on Titan literally
save the world, save New York.
Yeah, Attack on Titan literally saves the world. There you go.
Yeah, I Donatello, just future reference, because I don't think I've said this on any podcast, so I have to say it. Donatello has always been my favorite Ninja Turtle since I was a little kid, and I grew up with like the old school ones because I'm from the '90s. And Donatello was always my favorite. So watching this movie was just different for me. I was like, wait a minute, what are you saying, man? It was special.
Yeah, that was pretty special. Finally, Gundam, the Witch from Mercury.
Oh man.
I am not as well versed in the whole Gundam franchise. I've seen a few of them. I think this is a really good entry point because it's disconnected from everything else, and it is a really good story. A bunch of like high school shenanigans, and also a bunch of like kids fighting each other with giant robots that could also be misinterpreted in a sort of Attack on Titan way, but I think it manages to avoid leaving room for like bad takes, if that makes sense. And it's just a very beautiful show.
That's amazing, man. I'm excited, obviously, to see even more throughout the year. I feel like there's a lot of good stuff coming out. If you could point out one or two, what's something you're looking to?
JiuJitsu Kaizen. I haven't read the manga, but everyone is talking about the upcoming arc, the Shibuya incident arc. I am very scared.
Me too.
I don't know what happened, but I've been told to prepare. And Spy Family as well in October.
Yeah.
That show is just delightful, and I can't wait to see more.
It's crazy, man, because dodging JJK spoilers is like an art form. It's different. It's a different level, man. It's tough because I feel like I've seen like, I don't know, a panel, but it doesn't give me anything. Or maybe I've seen a character that is going to show up, and I'm like, oh, cool, they're going to show up, and that's it. I don't know what the stakes are. I don't know if like it's a good thing or a bad thing, but it's killing me because if I'm being honest, I said this with Kate as well. JiuJitsu Kaizen was hitting like that kind of specialness for me that I feel like I've been missing personally. This is personal, right? Where I've watched Demon Slayer, I've watched all the other shonen type anime, but there's something about JiuJitsu Kaizen that's uniquely special, where the characters, the themes, the gojo of it all, like it really does have like a different through line. And I posted this on my Twitter. I love the ideology behind it, where at least in season 1, right, and a little bit of season 2, but mainly season 1, where it's mainly about this kind of festering at the top, where the people at the top are becoming almost just as bad as the curses in the jiu-jitsu world, and Gojo is kind of trying to course correct that while actual demons from hell are coming out. Like it's a really cool aspect of like the ideas of good and evil, and it's really, really, really interesting. So this arc, I can't wait, man. I really can't wait.
It definitely feels like the closest we have right now to like an event type anime like Attack on Titan, because like you mentioned Demon Slayer, and as big as that show is, I feel like it's mostly fight scenes and it's mostly like the animation, whereas for JiuJitsu Kaisen, I think like people are as excited about just seeing these characters interact, about just like a conversation or a joke, as they are about the action. Just like the way people were loving, and I was loving this past arc, the flashback arc we get on and Gojo. It feels like every moment matters and is being told so beautifully in a way that with Demon Slayer, for all its flaws and all of its perks as well, and all of the things that it does good, I think like is mostly the visuals that are because like that go viral. It's mostly like the big action moments that like go big, whereas JiuJitsu Kaisen feel like you need to be watching every week because every week something happens or every week there's at least something funny. And I think that's pretty special. Yeah.
It is special, man. Absolutely. All right, Rafael, where can everyone find you, man?
I'm still somehow on Twitter, X, whatever you call it, as just my name,
Twitter.
Rafael Motamayor. I'm also on Blue Sky that I don't really use that much, but I should. Same, just my name. And then I'm on my running on Slash Film, Vulture again.
Remind me, Motamayor.
Motamayor.
Motamayor. Oh, I swear, man. That's why I didn't say it in the beginning because I was like, I'm gonna mess it up, and I'm like, Rafael.
He's good, man. Like I'm pretty sure it was a misspelling at some point because there are so many variations of my name, but of that last name, but no one except my immediate family has the exact spelling that I have.
Yeah.
So at this point, like it's fine.
Yeah, I feel that, man. Absolutely. Yeah, and you can find me, same thing, on Twitter, Instagram, as I said, TikTok, at my own personal TikTok, at Squad Leader Ace, and on Blue Sky as well, at Squad Leader Ace. It feels cool to say that. It's the quietest social media platform there is, but yet it's kind of cool. It feels different. It feels more like chill. But either way, go check me out there. And obviously follow First Cut if you haven't done so already. Make sure to subscribe here, leave a comment, leave a like, subscribe, all that good stuff. We appreciate you guys. But either way, guys, for First Cut, we're going to be peacing out. So peace, dudes.